All right, today we have Chapter 6, Section 1, the Geography of Ancient Greece. So here we see a new map of ancient Greece. And you can tell by looking at the map that Greece has a lot of mountains. There are also some city states pointed out here. We have Delphi, we have Athens, Sparta, Olympia. We also see the island of Crete and the island of Rhodes. Everything tinted green here is considered part of ancient Greece. So even the parts over in Asia Minor, which are marked Ionia, those are Greek colonies. And again, ancient Greece is kind of in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. Just to reference yourself there. Okay, let's begin. Greece's geographic setting. First, there was nothing. Then came Mother Earth. The gods of night and day appeared next, and then starry sky. Earth and sky created 12 titans. These great gods rebelled against their father sky and took away his power. We're going to see this as a common theme in Greek mythology. The youngest of the titans, Kronos, ruled in his father's place. In time, Kronos had 6 children. The youngest, mighty Zeus, toppled Kronos from his throne. With such words, the people of ancient Greece described the struggle of their gods. Like their gods, the people of Greece had to struggle with power and independence. Their struggles began with the land itself. The land of Greece looks as if the sea had smashed to pieces. Some pieces have drifted away to form small rocky islands. Others barely cling to the mainland. Greece is a peninsula made up of peninsulas. A peninsula is an area of land surrounded by water on 3 sides. So it's almost an island, but it's attached to land at a certain point. Look at the map. As you can see, no part of Greece is very far away from the sea, right? All of those colonies are close to the water. Mountains are the major landform of Greece. Greece's islands are mostly mountain peaks. Mountains wrinkle the mainland, so there are only small patches of farmland. Only about 1/5 of Greece is farmable for growing crops. No wonder the Greeks became such good traders and sailors. At times they left Greece to found new colonies far away. What was life like for people living in Greece 3,000 years ago? In a way, the ancient Greeks were all islanders. Some lived on actual islands, completely surrounded by water, or on small peninsulas, but others lived on land islands, mountains that were cut off from small communities, or they were small communities that were cut off from each other. They had no communication for the most part. The geography of Greece made it hard for people of different civilizations from different communities to get together. For this reason, it's no surprise that the ancient Greek communities thought of themselves as separate countries. And that's why we see that they all have different kings. Each one developed its own customs and beliefs. Each believed its own land, traditions, and way of life were best. And each was more than ready to go to war to protect itself. In fact, for most of ancient Greek history, the Greeks were so busy fighting themselves that it was easy to forget that they did share some really important pieces of culture. They had the same heritage, they spoke the same language, they used a Greek alphabet, they worshiped the same gods. Greek beginnings. All Greeks shared a wealth of stories and myths about their origins, like we read at the beginning here. The myths explained the creation of the universe and the features of nature. They described the adventures of Greek heroes and gods. Various stories told how cities and traditions came to be, like the story of Athens. The most important stories were about the Trojan War. A long struggle between Greece and the city of Troy, which is on the west coast of Asia Minor. All the Greek heroes from both regions joined in the war. And this is just a picture of the rocky coast of Greece, like modern day. But I think it's helpful because you can see that the people really live close to the water and that in the distance you have those mountains where you really can't settle. You can't build your house there easily. You can't farm. So the people are close to the shore. So let's talk about the Trojan War. The story of the Trojan War has everything a good story should. It has great battles, plots, and schemes, loyalty, betrayal. According to myth, a prince named Paris from a wealthy city called Troy was the guest of a Greek chieftain named Menelaus. Breaking the laws of the gods, Paris kidnapped Menelaus' wife Helen and took her to Troy. To get Helen back, the Greek chieftains all sent a huge army to attack Troy. So we're really talking like all the city-states against one little city-state. For the next 10 long years, the war dragged on. Many heroes on both sides perished. At last, the Greeks conquered Troy by a trick, the Trojan horse. The Greeks burned and looted Troy and then returned home. 2 epics, which are long poems about the war, survive today. They are the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Iliad tells about a quarrel between Greek leaders in the last year of the war. The Odyssey describes the adventures of the hero Odysseus as he struggles to return to his homeland from Troy. These epics may have been composed by many people, but they're credited to Homer, an epic poet. The poems were important to the Greeks. They taught them things like what their gods were like, what their personalities were like, and how the noblest of their heroes behaved. They became role models. Today, people think these poems came from stories memorized by several poets and passed down by word of mouth through many generations. Homer may have been the last and greatest in this line of poets who told about the Trojan War. And there's a Frank and Ernest cartoon here. It says Trojan Horse Strategy Session. Think bigger. Troy discovered. Over the years, people came to believe that Troy and the Trojan War were just myth. They were just fiction. An amateur archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann disagreed. In the late 1800s, he used clues in the Iliad to pinpoint the location of Troy. When he and later archaeologists dug there, they found 9 layers of ruins from ancient cities. One of them is the right date, and it does look like it was the city was burned at that time. So one was possibly the Troy of the Iliad and the Odyssey. Never really know. The Dark Ages of Greece. Not long after the end of Troy, civilization in Greece collapsed. No one knows exactly why. Life went on, but poverty was everywhere. People no longer traded for food. They couldn't. They had nothing to trade with. And other goods beyond Greece. They had to depend on what they could raise, like in their backyards themselves. It'd be really hard. Some were forced to move to islands in the western part of Asia Minor because they couldn't survive in Greece. The art of writing disappeared. These years, from the early 1100s BCE to about 750 BCE, have been called Greece's Dark Ages. Without writing, people had to depend on word of mouth to keep their traditions and history alive. Old traditions were remembered only in the myths they were told and retold. Greece's Dark Ages were not completely bleak, however. During this time, families gradually began to resettle in places where they could grow crops and they could raise animals better. Some of these farms may have developed into villages. When they chose places to build their farms and then villages, people favored places near rocky, protected hills, which was better protection from invaders, right? The name for such a place is an acropolis, which literally means that it's the highest part of the city, but it's also where people are safe from attack. Governing our new city-states. Sometime around 750 BCE, villages in a small area probably joined together to form a big city in the shadow of an acropolis. Stronger together, right? At that time, each city began to develop its own traditions and its own form of government and laws. Each one was not only a city, but also a separate independent state or country. Today we call these cities city-states, or tiny nations with their own government. Each included a city and the villages and fields surrounding it. hundreds of Greek city-states grew up, each more or less independent. So we see a picture of a Grecian urn, and so we should talk about that. These warriors decorate a Greek vase. The background is the natural color of baked clay from Greece. The black figures were painted on with black ink. Greek urns told stories around the vase. Another way to tell a story. This shows us a fight scene from the Iliad. All right, now our next several sections are going to talk about kind of the evolution of governance in ancient Greece. So we have kind of a flow chart here. It's going to go from monarchy to oligarchy to tyranny to democracy. So you're going to start by talking about aristocracy, which is also the time period that's marked oligarchy on our list, which is a little confusing, but we'll explain. Aristocracy, nobles rule. The earliest rulers of the city-states were probably chieftains or kings. Monarchy. They were probably also military leaders. By the end of Greece's Dark Ages, most city-states were ruled by aristocrats or members of rich and powerful families. Aristocrats controlled most of the good land. Remember when we said that only a fifth of the land in Greece was actually farmable? When people resettled, the rich really controlled that good land. And so they kept getting richer. They could afford horses and chariots and the best weapons and armies to protect themselves. Aristocrats ruled Greek city-states for about 600 years. And that's why on our chart where it says oligarchy, 1200 BC to 600 BC, that is a span of 600 years. So let's talk about why we're using those two terms. We're referring to oligarchy here as aristocracy. In an oligarchy, only a few people have power. In an aristocracy, the wealthy have power. So you see, both are accurate, right? If only the wealthy are governing, then only a few people are governing. So both of those are true, but they don't necessarily mean the same thing, do they? But both are accurate words to describe this time period in ancient Greece. Purposefully pointing those two out to you. All right, and then on to tyranny. Tyrants, a new type of ruler. As the Greeks sailed to foreign ports, trading their olive oil and their marble, as things start to pick up and people are making more money, they're trading things and other products from Greece. The city-states became richer. Now a middle class of merchants and artisans developed. They wanted some say in the government of their cities. These people couldn't afford to equip themselves with like an army per se, or horses or chariots. However, they could afford armor, swords, and spears, and there were more of them than the aristocrats. With these weapons, large groups of soldiers could fight effectively on foot. Gradually, military strength in the cities shifted from aristocrats to merchants and artisans, kind of sucked in some of those people who had been fighting for the aristocrats, who were like, maybe I'll join this side. As a result of these changes, aristocratic governments were often overthrown and then replaced with rulers called tyrants. So a tyrant is a ruler who seizes power by force. Although in this case, they're really being put into power by this group. Tyrants were usually supported by the middle and working classes. Today, we think of tyrants as being cruel and violent, and that was probably true of some Greek tyrants. But others ruled wisely and well. Tyrants ruled Greek city-states for the next 100 years. So not nearly as long as the aristocrats, but they had their day. But they paved the way for democracy. So really, we've gone from one person to a few people to tyrants to democracy. Governing is spreading a little bit. Here you see a picture of Athens, the Acropolis of Athens. And it says the Acropolis of Athens was known for its beautiful temples. But did you know that it's also a fortress? Because it is an Acropolis after all. During wartime, people moved to the Acropolis where the enemy couldn't easily reach them. Eventually, the people of many city-states overthrew their tyrants who were too harsh. A few cities moved to form a government called a democracy. In a democracy, citizens govern themselves. The city state in which democracy was most fully expressed was Athens. In about 594 BCE, a wise Athenian leader named Solon won the power to reform the laws. Solon was well known for his fairness. His laws reformed both the economy and the government of Athens. One of his first laws canceled debts and freed citizens. Citizens specifically who had been enslaved for having debts. You have no money and you go to jail and you can continually make no money. It's a bad, vicious cycle. Another law allowed any male citizen of Athens, aged 18 or older, to have a say in debating important laws. These laws and others allowed Athens to become a leading democracy of the ancient world. However, not everyone living in Athens benefited from democracy. Only about 1 in 5 Athenians was considered a citizen. 1 in 5. Some of the people living in Athens were enslaved. These people didn't take part in democracy, nor did women or those not born in Athens. But men who were 18 or older, who had been born in Athens, were free and self-governing. All right. So lots of notes to take today. And that's it.